All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to talk about Roy Jones Jr. blaming Errol Spence Jr. for the Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. fight not happening, or at least heavily implying that his team is the reason. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. In this video, we're going to be covering what Roy Jones Jr. had to say about Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford fight not taking place, and pretty much putting the blame on Errol Spence Jr. for why the fight didn't happen, despite every single solitary piece of evidence going the other direction. But before I get into that, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are new to the channel, thank you so much for checking out the video. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you can be notified of when we release more videos. Your support is very much appreciated. Now, if you're a longtime subscriber and supporter to the channel, thank you very much. This particular video, I am going to dedicate to my guy, Zenith 360, who I know once hearing this is not going to be happy at all. Because Roy Jones Jr., man, come on, Roy. Come on, Roy. Man, sometimes, man, when you don't know what you're talking about, you shouldn't talk, okay? And in this particular instance, that is exactly what the case is, in my opinion. And it's not even it's borderline. It's not even borderline fact. It just doesn't make sense what the man said. But let's go through it. He was interviewed on Fight Hub. Shout out to Fight Hub. Great work over there. Just kind of like, you know, the work that comes out of Fight Hype, videographers that do really, really good interviews. And caught up with Roy Jones Jr. and asked Roy Jones Jr. what he thought about the Errol Spence Jr. fight and Terence Crawford fight not taking place. And he said, you know, basically what everybody, you know, believes, you know, what a shame it is. And then in box, he said that he always knew that the fight wasn't going to happen. He said, until I saw him in the ring, I wasn't going to believe that the fight was going to happen. He said, and then he talks about how, you know, how boxing, with these guys being the two top guys in the division, how they, no matter what, those guys have to get together and make that fight no matter what. He says he refers to a circumstance with himself and James Toney, where James Toney, when he and James Toney were the top two middleweights, and he made sure that he fought James Toney. He said at one point in time, his father had rejected the James Toney fight, but Roy Jones Jr. was like, no, I need to get that fight. And he took that fight, even though he got stripped of his belt by the IBF for taking the fight. Excuse me. Even though he got his stripped of his IBF belt for taking the fight, right? But so all is well with that, right? All is well with that. Then he says, look, I know Terence Crawford wanted this fight, but it's hard to make when you have somebody that stands in between you and the fight getting made. Right now, who could he be talking about? Obviously talking about Al Heyman and saying, you know, he knew, and this is why he knows Terence Crawford wanted to fight, because Terence Crawford told him so. He said, I know Terence Crawford wanted to fight. Terence Crawford called me on the phone and said he wanted to fight. Errol Spence Jr., he's got somebody between him and the fight. So, you know, basically saying, with being polite, but at the same time saying it's because Errol had somebody in between him and Terence Crawford that the fight didn't get made. Now, only problem with what Roy Jones Jr. says in that is that the exact opposite is what happened. What happened was Terence Crawford walked away from the fight. Errol Spence didn't walk away from the fight. Errol accepted, those guys had, according to Terence Crawford, had agreed to terms. And then Terence said, I can't wait until February. I have to fight December. So he went and took a light touch fight, which is the exact opposite of what Roy Jones Jr. said should be done. So this just takes me back. Like, sometimes people don't want to say, you know, that they're wrong. I'm going to say that at this particular instance that I was wrong about Roy Jones. I had done several videos about Roy Jones where Roy I always treated Roy and what Roy said as if Roy was being fair, as if, like, for example, the fact that, he would say that he would admit, look, I've seen Terence Crawford fight more often than I saw Errol Spence fight. And when he talked about what was happening in the fight, even though he leaned towards Terence Crawford, I thought he gave a fair evaluation of it. But in this particular circumstance, when all of the known facts point the other direction, for you to say, well, I really know that Terence Crawford wanted the fight because Terence Crawford told me so. Well, Errol Spence Jr. has said that he wanted to fight. Why do you believe that it's somebody that it's Errol's team standing in between the fight, keeping the fight from happening, when the guy that walked away from the fight was Terence Crawford? And when you say, or when Roy Jones Jr. said, look, my father at one point in time had kept me from getting the fight. And I was like, no, I'm going to make the fight no matter what. That's what you're supposed to do. Well, did Terence Crawford make that fight no matter what? Absolutely not. He did not do that. Did not do that. So Roy Jones Jr. is literally laying out the things that he thinks fighters should do. Errol Spence Jr. is the one that did exactly what Roy Jones said that you should do. And why do I mean that? Errol Spence Jr. did not take a guarantee for that fight. Errol Spence Jr. Agreed to allowing Terence Crawford, who has one belt, and where Errol Spence Jr. has 3 belts, he allowed Terence Crawford to come out second and come in the ring as the champion, while Errol walked in the ring first. Errol Spence Jr. is the one that team that said, okay, you want transparency? I'll give you transparency. And Terence Crawford's asking to literally control the expenses for the card. Right? Their right to sign off and approve all agreements. That's something else Errol Spence Jr. agreed to. When everything is said and done and they all thought that they had an agreement, Terence Crawford is the one that came up and said, okay, I'm going. Didn't even say I'm going. Just left. Just ghosted him. Didn't even tell him he wasn't accepting the fight. Just took another fight and was negotiating for another fight the entire time. Now, if I could ask Roy Jones Jr. something, I would ask, hey, Roy, did he tell you that he was negotiating for another fight at the same time? Errol Spence Jr. wasn't negotiating for somebody else another fight at the same time. Terence Crawford had been negotiating with somebody else for a fight for the previous 6 months, right? Or at least 5 months of negotiations to do a fight with somebody else. If you take it no matter what, then the onus is on Terence Crawford and not Errol Spence Jr. I'm sorry, man. I'm just not into this. Well, we're just going to spread blame evenly stuff, or much less what Roy Jones is doing, which is going to take the word of Terence Crawford over the phone. But I said, oh yeah, I really want to fight. Well, I know Terence wants to fight because that's my guy. Terence called me and told me. Nah, bro, you think he did because that's your guy. So now, since that's your guy and we know that's your guy, pretty much everything else you say, you got to take with a grain of salt, because as long as Terence Crawford tells you that he wants it, then it's Al Heyman's fault, which to me is the biggest cop-out for somebody ducking a fight that I have seen, because especially when it wasn't even the case, and it's the guy that actually walked away from the fight was Terence Crawford and not Errol Spence. But, it is what it is. That's my take on the matter, man. It's frustrating to me, but it is what it is. Hopefully we'll start getting some big fights soon and we can start talking about that type of stuff. But anyway, you let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.